Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today's video we're going to be talking about the newest palette from Natasha Denona. So this is the I Need a Warm palette. This has been out for a few weeks now, and I'm probably the last person to post a video about it, but I figured since I was sick when this came out and I couldn't use it right away, that I would spend a little time playing with it and getting to know it and getting to know the formulas before I made a video on it. So this is going to be a more in-depth review. I'm going to do some swatches. I'll do a demo so you can see what I'm talking about. I have some footage from some other looks that I've done, and I can talk about what I think of the color story and the formula, because this does have some new formulas to the brand in here. And if you're new here, welcome. My name is Colin. I'm a non-binary Latinx scientist and lover of makeup with a definite soft spot and interest in indie, like sparkly indie makeup and more high-end and luxury makeup. And I tend to be pretty analytical in my videos. I just try to make thoughtful, analytical content, and I have new videos every week, so I'd really love to have you subscribe. So like I said in the intro, I'm gonna do some swatches. I haven't like fully swatched the palette. I've been using it and I've swatched some on the back of my hand and stuff, but I haven't like done full swatches. So I'm gonna do some swatches and some swatch comparisons. I have a nice stack of palettes here to compare this to, and some indie shadows to compare the shimmers to as well. I brought out my singles. So we're gonna do that, do a demo so you can see how some of these perform. And I will also include some of those clips from looks that I've done when I've gone to work and such. Really, side note, really liking the way my base makeup came today. I will have everything linked in the description box like normal and listed, but really like how everything pulled together. I used kind of my go-to normal products with a few other things. Also, before I begin, I did want to say Finding Ferdinand sent me some PR for the first time. I do have a bunch of I have some of their glosses and a bunch of their blushes, and I really like their formulas, and they sent me their new lip balms that just came out. I do want to try their black lip balm, but this is their new like Metamorphosis one. So there's like a clear one, a pH pink one, and then a pH pink with gold sparkle. And I'm currently wearing a light layer of the Cinnabar lip gloss from Lisa Eldridge, which is really pigmented, so I just do a little bit layer. But earlier before that, I was wearing the clear one, which is like just perfectly clear. It kind of reminds me of the ones that my husband has from Hermes and Byredo. Like, it's just a nice hydrating lip balm, but I've been using this for a couple days. Packaging is really nice. And I was wearing this before I put the gloss on, and it felt really nice as a nice prep step. I mean, this is a very hydrating lip gloss, but this I think will work well under like to prep before lipsticks, especially a matte lipstick. So I did want to mention that real quick since I am just starting to test those out. So I'm going to talk about some of my first impression thoughts of this before we get into more details in the swatches. So right off the bat, I really like the packaging. It is reminiscent of the I Need a Nude palette, which I do have as well, and I will show you comparisons for. I really like this kind of 3D texture that she did versus something like the YUCCA palette, which is just this really beautiful matte gradient. I really like this. I don't love the name. I think I Need a Nude worked. When this came out, I didn't love the concept. I don't know how to say this. I didn't love the concept because this is really only a nude if you are fair to light medium. Like even me, some of the shades aren't really nude for me. I like them, but they're not really like a nude or a neutral. So I thought it was kind of limiting to say this is like the nude palette, because this is very much the nude for lighter skin tones. And this is supposed to be that for warmer skin tones, people with a warmer undertone or slightly darker skin, so like that light medium to tan range. So it doesn't go super dark. I do think we need something, we need more, I think a taupe version would be really nice, and I think something darker, so something that's like, that goes very deep and has shimmers that will work really well on a deep complexion. Some of these obviously will, but some of them will just kind of look ashy on some people. So I think she needs to expand and have, like, if you're gonna do these kind of nude palettes, I think there needs to be kind of like the perfect nude for each kind of skin range. So I'm hoping that these continue, and then we'll get a couple, like 1 or 2 more darker ones to kind of fill everything in, especially because these are magnetic like Oliver palettes, so you can mix and match. So if you really like some of these shades and then you get some from the darker shade, you could make your own perfect neutral palette. And for the name itself, I don't really love I Need a Warm palette. If you say the whole name, I Need a Warm palette, it works. I think I Want a Warm palette, I've heard many people say it would sound better because of alliteration, but not everything says I need a, like, if you're looking at it, it's the I Need a Warm palette here, but on a lot of stuff it's just listed as I Need a Warm, which sounds stupid. I will just say that right now. I enjoy this palette. I've been using it for a couple weeks now. I need a nude is a phrase you would say, like I need a nude lip, I need a nude eyeshadow, I need a nude blush. I need a warm is just not the same. Like you can say I need a warm blush, I need a warm lip, but just I need a warm as like a fragment just sounds clunky, and I don't love that. But you know, it's in the name of the palette, it doesn't really matter. Kind of like the shade names, like they can be fun and they can be interesting, especially if there is like meaning behind them, like in the YUCCA palette, like where some of these shade names come from. But it's not like that's what matters. What matters is the color, the tone, the texture, the form. This is the palette. I have really been enjoying it. It's a nice mix of matte and shimmers. I have almost all of her mini palettes. I'm missing Xenon and Retro Glam. And I do kind of want them both, but not for full price, because neither are ones that I would wear enough to justify spending like 70 bucks on. But I do really enjoy this. So I'm gonna play with these. I've been mostly playing with this bottom row for like daily work looks, and then some of these mid shades. I have not used the Multichrome. I've swatched it, but have not used Phenomena, the Multichrome, so I think I will use that today so we can show that off and then compare it with some others. So let's get into the swatches. I always like to preface that I don't think swatches matter as far as how they look. I think people are too reliant on swatches because you're not swatching. I mean, eye swatches are helpful for seeing tone, but like swatch performance and on the eye performance are very different. So I am going to turn the camera down to my table, swatch on my arm. I don't put any lotion or primer or anything down. It's just my arm. I'll take my watch off, so there might be a mark from that. And then this is just to see what the tone looks like, see what the textures look like, and then compare them to others. Okay, so welcome to my table. Now let's get into the swatches. I apologize for the chipped nails. These are one of the new Cleona polishes from the Gray Matter collection, but I did them over a week ago, and had a busy week at work. So they started chipping a little bit, but I think for over a week, these look really good. But here is the palette up close, and then if I open it up, you can see all of the shades. Okay, so I'm gonna do swatches. I'm gonna do all of the mattes, and then I'll do the shimmers, and I'll try to group them so that they're next to each other color-wise. So like I said before, I took my watch off. I don't have any primer or anything down. This is just gonna be on my arm so you can see these tones. I do have the shade descriptions pulled over here so we can talk about how they compare to the brand's descriptions. So I'm gonna start light to dark. So I'm gonna start with Mellow, which is described as a matte light peachy nude. It is one of the creamy matte formula. It feels very nice. And we've got Ripe, which is described as a light medium peach brown. I would say light medium peach. I don't really see brown in there at all. And then we've got Fervor, which is described as a matte. And then we've got Fervor, which is described as a matte medium warm caramel. I would say that is very accurate. So I'm gonna start down here so we have as much room as possible. So this is Mellow. It is definitely a light peach. It's not bright enough for me to use this like necessarily a brightening shade, but it is a really nice light peach. Here is Ripe, and I would say it is just a peach. I wouldn't say a peachy brown. I don't think there's really any brown in there. It's just a little bit darker of a peach. And then here is the caramel shade, Fervor. Really like this. This definitely has some brown in it, and you can see how little brown there is in these in comparison. Okay, so next I will do Soft Spot, which is described as a matte, medium, earthy brown, and I would say that is pretty accurate. I'll do the flash over shade last, so the next is going to be Vim, which is described as a matte, deep warm brown. This one feels a little bit drier than the others, but it is a deep shade, so that is probably why. And then, oh, I did these on the wrong finger. And then Pep is the last one. This one actually feels less dry than Vim. Pep is described as a matte, deep, warm brown. So we've got Soft Spot. Love this shade. This is like a perfect everyday brown for me. And then we've got Vim, which you can see is not actually that deep, but does build up on itself. So I'll do a second swipe. So that is the deep warm brown. And then Pep is also described as a matte deep warm brown on their website. I would say this is warmer, this is more neutral. I would say Pep is darker and more neutral, and Vim is medium and neutral. And you can see how neutral it is compared to like neutral warm. It's a little bit more neutral than this, but it's still warmer. And then last for the mattes is Flashover, which is their new formula. So this is the Slip Cream Matte Medium Clay Brown, and it really does feel slippy and like a cream. And you can just see, oh, I got a little sparkle there. It is very smooth. It's medium. It's, yeah, I would say clay brown is a perfect description. It is soft and silky. It's definitely that cream to powder formula, but a newer, softer, silkier version, and I really love it. I want more of these. And it really is, for my skin tone, like putting this all over as the base is like the perfect start of a smoky eye. Elm is described as a sparkling foiled light bronzy nude. I don't think that is accurate at all. I don't think this is sparkling foiled. I think it is just a standard metallic, and I would say a golden champagne. It's really pretty, but I think their shade is fully wrong. Fancy is described as a metallic champagne. And again, you can see this one has more gold to it. I would say golden champagne versus neutral champagne. And then I'll do Snug next. Snug is described, this is the Metal Gloss formula, which is new to this palette. So here's Elm, and you can see it is a really beautiful kind of yellow champagne, yellow gold. There's no sparkle, no foil. It is just a standard metallic. I will use this, I've used this on my inner corner, and I will use it later today so you can see it is not a sparkling foiled. And then this is Fancy, which is her standard metallic in a champagne, and I see a little bit more sparkle in this, but this is pretty consistent with her metallic formula. And then this is Snug, the Metal Gloss, and I have used this on the lid, so you will see it in a clip at the end. It is really pretty. I don't really see it as glossy or the way the brand describes the formula. It is very shiny. It's kind of, I would say, between her wet effect and her metallic. It's kind of a mix. There's a little bit more sparkle and sheen than there is in the metallics, but it's not as much as the wet effect, and I will show you that in comparisons. So next I'll do these. So this is Push, which is a sparkling foiled medium rose gold, rusty rose gold. I would say that is pretty accurate. And then Phenomena is the Multichrome. So here's the rose gold and the sparkling foiled, and I would say this is definitely a sparkling foiled. And you can see, hopefully, the difference. This is just a soft sheen, kind of satin metallic. I would say this is a satin. This is more foiled, more sparkly, thicker. This is her sparkling foiled formula. It's not as sparkly as some others, but this is definitely not. And then the Multichrome, very smooth, not the shiftiest, but still really pretty. It's gonna mostly show kind of reddy orange on screen, but when I'm looking at it, my angle off to the side, I'm seeing like yellow, like gold to green. And then hopefully you can kind of see that as I move my arm. The brand describes this as a multichrome peach pink green. I would say, yeah, there's like peach, red, peachy bronze, like peachy orange, red, to yellow, to gold, to green. I don't really see pink. And then the last three, and the ones that I actually use the most, there's Homey, which this is a metal gloss warm nude. I think this is a little glossier than Snug. Hanker is more of a satin to me. Hanker is described as a metallic medium dark golden brown. And then Dynamism is supposed to be a duochrome, brown with green specks. I wouldn't really call it a duochrome. There's not a shift, but there is gold sparkle. So here's that other gloss, metal gloss, and this one does seem glossier to me. This one looks more like the Wet Effect. So these two shades are supposed to be the same formula, and they are inconsistent. This is shinier, wetter, glossier. I think Homey is the metal gloss. I'm not really sure what Snug is, but I wouldn't really call it metal gloss. But Homey, if you want to have that as a metal gloss, I would say yes. And then here is Dynamism, and it is just a really beautiful warm brown with green specks. It's not really a duochrome, it's not shifting, but you do see that like sparkle of green on the eyes. I've used this one a lot, it's my go-to. And then Hanker is this golden brown, really beautiful, more satin, perfect everyday, like put one of these two all over the lid, call it a day kind of shades for me. So there is the palette all swatched out. I think it's a really beautiful palette. And I do think it is warm without being too warm, too orange, too red, like a lot of things. And you can really see how golden brown Hanker is next to these others. Hanker would work well with the golden palette. So here are those swatches a little bit closer. Hopefully that is helpful. And then let's do some side-by-side comparisons. So here is the warm palette, and here is the golden palette. I think these are really nice companions. I think golden goes a little bit lighter, and then a little bit darker. I think Log is darker than any of these, so this goes from lighter to darker, and has really beautiful finishes in here. I really like this. Hanker and Varis are probably the two that look the most similar in the pan, but if you see, they're not exactly the same. I think Varis actually has more sheen, is more metallic, and Hanker is a little bit more satin. So here is Varis from Golden, and here is Hanker. So Hanker is a little more satin, a little less shiny. Varis definitely has more of a bronze glow to it, and this is just like a golden brown satin. Very similar, but not identical. Hopefully that is helpful. And then to compare the formulas, so Fizzy is one of her Wet Effect shades, and you can see right off the bat it does look different, but here's Fizzy next to Homey. So this is the metal gloss, and this is the Wet Effect. So here is Fizzy, the Wet Effect, and here is Homey, the metal gloss. I would say texture-wise, Fizzy feels a little thinner and more pressed into the pan. Homey has a little bit more texture in the pan, but on the eye, they give the same effect. I think they both give kind of a Wet Effect. So it's like the texture in the pan and like feeling it does feel different. Fizzy is thinner, Homey is a little thicker, but they're giving the same effect. So I understand why they're named different, because they do feel different formula-wise, but they're both giving kind of the same end appearance. That wet effect sheen on the lid. And then Nubia in this one is a sparkling foiled. And I'll grab another sparkling foiled real quick. This is the shade Plantasia from YUCCA, and then we'll get into Elm. So I'll do these on the back of my hand since there's not as much. So Nubia from Golden is a sparkling foiled, and you can see that sparkle, hopefully. And here's the one from YUCCA, the Plantasia. It's even more foiled. This is more indie kind of shadow to me. You can see it's thinner, it's got a lot of sparkle. This one's a little more foiled and a little more like sparkly foiled. This one I just love. And then here is Elm, which they describe as a sparkling foiled. And you can see it's not. It's a satin metallic. It's pretty, but similar to Hanker, I would say these are on kind of the same. Hanker's a little more satin, but this is just a metallic. It is not a sparkling foiled. Whatever, no matter what Natasha says, it is not a sparkling foiled. I think these are gonna be used together a lot for me. And then here is the I Need a Nude next to it, so you can really see how much cooler I Need a Nude is. So this is definitely made for fairer skin tones with these like really pale shades, this Mia shade. You can get some depth, and I do really like it for shades like Filigree. The shades I use in here the most are Tender, Filigree, Travertine, Ella, Muse, Delilah. I have used Wet a few times. I do like Sheen. I don't like Mia. Fair, I don't really use, except for maybe the inner corner. But you can see, if this was too pale for you, or too cool toned, I think this is a really nice option. Here is YUCCA next to it if you wanted to see those more olivey tones, just in case. I think they're fully different. I just threw it in because it is a newer one, and I wanted to show those foils so you can see how much more foiled these. This is the first time she had the sparkling foileds, and these are way more indie level sparkle compared to any of these. I want more of this formula. And then just for shade comparisons, I will do Phenomenon, the Multichrome, in a minute, but here are some of her other warm palettes. So here is the Sunrise. I never got Sunset. This is discontinued, but if you already have it, you can kind of see this has a lot of warmth to it. Citrine, very yellow, Cornelian, very like marigold. You've got Jasper, which I really love. You've got a light peach. You've got these like more golden nude shades, but this is a lot more bold, a little more colorful. This is very much neutral warm. And I think seeing it next to that, you can see how it is warm, but it's not like warm, and a lot more subdued and neutral. And here is it next to Bronze. And you can see these have so much more red and orange in them. So there is not really any direct dupes. These are much more yellow, much more orange over here, more red in these. You do have some pretty sparkly bronzes in here. But this is pretty bold. This does work really well on tan skin, I believe. This is a little more desaturated, a little bit more toned down, a little bit more nude, and that's why that I Need a Nude, but for warmer skin tones, versus the boldness of this. And then just to show you some other like warmer neutral palettes, here is Lisa Eldridge Cinnabar. If you have this was just discontinued. Similar idea, just like a condensed version. I do think that this is, Fired Earth does get darker than these, and you do have like a lot of warmth or the nude. This is like, if you like condensed these two palettes together. So you've got more depth, you've got warm nude, kind of similar to like maybe Soft Spot. And then this is a little bit more, you know, of that red brown. And then you've got copper, rose gold, and then the sparkly topper shade that is just literally gold sparkle suspended. So this is like a nice condensed version of it, but not really like one for one. And then over here we've got Melt Rust, in case you are an indie fan, so you can kind of see these side by side. Melt Rust, much warmer. Does have kind of Ravage and Rot, which are a little bit more cool neutral, but you can see those rusty warm tones. You've got peach, very yellow, kind of olive, brown, rusty brown, darker brown. Like, it's much darker, more saturated. I do like the shimmers in this, although I think Natasha has better shimmers in general. But if you already have rust and you're like, this is my perfect warm tone palette, and you don't need something more desaturated, I think you're probably good. Rust has been around for a while. Here's the Viseart Le Marais palette, which is the only real warm one I have from them. You can see again, these peach, warm browns, but more saturated. This is definitely more neutral warm, desaturated, which is why I like it and wanted to get it. And then here is the Byredo Remembrance palette, which is neutral, warm. There's some cool in here, but you can see some of those tones, a lot more red in these, more orange. Some of these peachy tones right here are very neutral, but you can kind of get, I love this shade, but you can see it's not as green, not as gold as that. I don't think these are really comparable. What I did want to, in case you have this, gives you kind of an idea side by side. And now let's do some comparisons for Phenomenon. So I grabbed my singles. So I'm going to pull these open and see if I have anything that is comparable. So I'm going to start with Phenomenon, and then I'm going to move this out of the way. So I'm going to do these the palm of my hand. So I'll put Phenomenon in the middle. You can see very smooth, very shiny, and it's got that, I see red on the edges, green on the edges here, and then more peachy gold in the middle. Here are my Terra Moons singles. None of these are necessarily a direct comparison, but hopefully this will help. So this is the shade Aurum Regalia, and this is the shade Cosmic Noon. I'll do those two. And then I guess I can do this one. I don't think this is all that similar. This is the shade Gamma Ray, which I think might have been discontinued. That has a little bit more texture to it. You can see they're in that same vein of like fall tones in a multichrome, but very different. These are a lot shinier too. So very smooth and shiny, but a little thinner, I would say. The Terra Moons is thinner and has some, I see some sparkle there. And then there is the second one, and then, yeah, that one's not that similar. The first two, but I can see, at least in my angle, I see a lot of green gold in these two, and this one's looking like purple. But then when I look at the camera, I'm seeing kind of bronze on this one. Yeah, none of these are direct dupe, but you can kind of see formula-wise what this compares to. This is a shimmer from Lethal Cosmetics. This is one of their multichromes, I think. I don't remember the name off the top of my head. And I'll put it right here. A little thinner. Like you can see some of my hand through it a little bit. Doesn't have the red that I'm seeing on Natasha Denona. I do like these Lethal ones. They're softer. They're not as thick as these. Not that these are thick. They're not like a Sydney Gray shadow. I find those very thick and heavy, but this is like kind of a sheer wash, which for certain occasions I really love. Here's some black base multis, so you can see these are, I think these are my Divina shades. So if I grab, what is this? This is, yep, Divina Chromosphere. And this is one of the other from that selection. So you can see these are way shiftier and they have that black base, so they're a little darker. I don't think, this one has purple and pink in it, so I'm not gonna do that one, but this one, Chromosphere, you can see a black base multichrome next to it is very different. The black base really makes it pop. So you can also put any of these over a black eyeshadow or a black liquid shadow, eyeliner, it'll make it pop more. But there's a black base multi next to it. And then if we do like Cleona or Shine by SD, I don't think any of these are directly comparable, but you can kind of see texture-wise. This is one of the ones from Riley's collab, and this is Cleona, what is this? Burnished Light. So here is the one from Riley's collaboration. I forget the name. It is more green, but you can see it. Shine by SD, it has a little bit more, a little more texture, but it does smooth out nicely. And then here is that Cleona shadow. And you can see it's not even a black base multi, but it does pop a little bit more. So I think Burnished Light is the closest. They're not identical, and I see a lot more green in it. But I think those are the closest. So here's Burnished Light. Again, this is the Natasha Denona shade here, the Lethal, Shine by SD, Divina, and then these are Terra Moons. Hopefully that is helpful, and hopefully this kind of puts some perspective on things. So now let's get in, go back to my face, do a demo, and get into final thoughts. Okay, so welcome back to my face. I zoomed you in a little bit so we can do the demo. Like I said, I will have all the everything I'm wearing in the description box. I'm wearing a lot of Lisa Eldridge. I have my Kosas concealer on in a few spots, Lisa Eldridge foundation in a few spots, like around my, right here in my jawline. I have her highlighter on. I have one of her liquid lipsticks. It's blush on. I have the new Liquid Silk shade in the Phoebe Down as a base, so as a primer. I've used this as a primer already, so I already know that it works. And it's pretty similar to my skin tone, so it just kind of acts as a nice canvas versus using my NARS eyeshadow base that is just clear. And then Kosas on the brows, and like I said, I had that lip gloss on, and I'll see if I reapply that or add a different lip at the end. But let's get into this. Like I said in the intro, I do want to use the multichrome today to see how it looks on the eyes. She's had a handful of multichromes before, and they are very smooth and pretty, not as textured or sparkly or as shifty as a lot of indie shades are, but you'll see comparisons in the swatches. And like I said, I do have clips of me using like Snug and Homey and Dynamism and Hanker, like these kind of shades that I will include. So if you look at the palette, you can see the darker shades, like these browns, are a little more neutral, like Soft Spot's pretty neutral, Flashover's neutral, and I would say Vim and Pep are both pretty neutral, and then Mellow, Ripe, and Fervor are the more warm shades, and they're that more peachy terracotta warmth versus like red-orange warmth. So because there's so much red in the multichrome, I am gonna start with like Ripe and Fervor and go from there. So for some of my looks with this, I have just been putting like Hanker on the lid and blending the edges, but I do think I want to start with the matte today. So I am going to pick up the shade Ripe on a fluffy brush. This is a What's Up Beauty brush that I've been testing. They sent these to me in PR. Okay, so I'm just gonna dust that right here. So you can see it looks fairly pale there, but you do get a decent amount of pigment. I mean, Natasha Denona shadows are known for being pretty pigmented, but easy to work with. So I just picked up a little bit and dust off the edges with this really fluffy brush. And I really like the way the mattes in this work. I like that they're warm, but they're this like peachy, earthy warm versus like red-orange, like the bronze palette, which I did, you'll see in those comparison swatches. So I'm just tapped in one more time, dust off the edges, and I'm just throwing a little bit more of this down. I really like that. And then if you want, you can use the shade Mellow to buff out the edges, especially if you're a little lighter than me. Or you want that kind of peachy highlight. So I'm just kind of blending that around the edges with the same brush up to the brow bone to smooth everything out. I really like that. These have been performing very well while I've been using them. And then I'm just taking a slightly smaller brush and picking up the shade Fervor, which is a little bit more terracotta leaning. You can see there's a little bit more brown in it, but it's that peachy brown still. Tap off the excess, and I'm gonna place that on the outer lid and into the crease. It's not super dark, but I just wanna slowly build up color. I can even put that like on the lid itself a little bit. This also kind of shows you the distinction between the two on the eye. Use a little bit of the peach and it becomes a little bit more neutral because this has just that little bit more brown in it. And for every day, if you don't want to go smoky, I would leave it here. Maybe just put Mellow on the lid if you want a bright matte lid, or use like one of these like fancy Elm Snug shades if you want like that brighter sparkle. This could be an easy, perfect everyday look. So I'm gonna pick up a little bit of Flash Over. I have really been enjoying that. This is her new cream to powder formula. I don't remember what she called it, and I don't have the actual like cardboard box anymore where it has the shade descriptions, but this is a cream to powder, and I'm thinking this is gonna replace her old cream powder, which I love, but I really do enjoy this. And it builds really nicely on the mattes. It works really nicely as a base. I've used it as the base, like put it all over the lid and then blend the edges with something, and then put one of the shimmers on. I've done that a handful of times, and I do really like this formula. And you can see it is more brown, more neutral. So it's taking a little bit of the warmth out, kind of grounding things. And even though it is that cream to powder texture, it's very smoothing for that, and then it blends into those mattes really nicely. And if you want to build up even more, you can pick up either Vim or Pep. I'll do a little bit. And you can see you can get even more depth. So you can get a decent amount of smoke with this, especially for like a perfect everyday amount of smoke. It doesn't have a black in it, so you're not gonna get that smoky. And you can see if you're darker than me, like I'm in that medium range. So if you're in, or some brands like the end of the light medium, early medium range of their like complexion products. So if you're in that like darker medium, medium tan, or darker, you're gonna get a good amount of use out of these darker shades, but you're never gonna get as dark as like a matte black or a charcoal or something. But for a soft smoky eye for every day, like these with the shade like Hanker or Dynamism, that was hard to say, are really lovely. And I will include a clip of that later. So I really like the structure that I've built so far. I can put a little bit of this down here if I want. So I'm gonna repeat this on the other eye, and then we'll get to the shimmers. So I just repeated this on the other eye. Performed really well. I've used these with this as a base before, and I've also used it over my normal NARS eyeshadow base. I have oily eyelids, so I have to use some kind of a base, and I think it performs equally well on both. I do just really like these now that I've gotten them. So I'm gonna use a brush to start, and I'm gonna go into Phenomena, and you can see as I pick it up, it is not as, it's creamy, but there's a little bit of texture and flakiness, so it's not one that like one of her standard metallics that I would start with the shimmer and blend the edges. I feel like you might get a little bit of fallout if you try that. But here's how it picks up on this. This is my favorite brush for shimmers. If you're new here, it's the Refer 21. It's just really condensed. And so it just picks up things really well, and I never get fallout. And this is really pretty. It's the perfect kind of fall multichrome. It's definitely not the most unique shade, but but today is technically the autumnal equinox, so it is the first day of fall, so it feels very fitting to put this on and wear it today. There it is. So it's mostly on camera. You're seeing kind of the orangey copper tones, and I'm seeing, as I look in my reflection in the mirror, a bit of gold right here in the center where it's the light's hitting it directly, so it's looking a little brighter and a little gold there. And then I see a hint of green off to the side, and if I like turn my head like this, I'm seeing a little bit of red. So I see that red tone that you could see very clearly in the pan, like peachy red. And if I go straight on, yeah, I see like a little bit of green off to the side, the gold, and then that peachy orange tone here. So it is pretty shifty, but it's smooth, and I'll use my finger so you can see there's that little bit of green off to the side, and then you can see that like red peach, and then if it's straight on, you see a little bit more golden peach. So I'll put a little bit more on. I do think it works a little bit better with a finger, but it did work fine with the brush. I think it's just a little smoother with a finger because the warmth of your finger helps it kind of melt in. And there is a little bit of sparkle. I personally I don't like a perfect kind of cut crease look. I like to tap with my finger and have the edge kind of blend and diffuse into the mattes. And then a little bit of that sparkle kind of trails up, but not enough to cover the matte. So you just see like a little bit of sparkle. And then for the inner corner, Mellow isn't bright enough to do like a true inner corner brightening shade for me. Like I have it right here on the edge to buff the edges, and it just blends the edge nicely, but it's not like, it's a little brightening but on me, but not too brightening. So I'm gonna pick up a little bit of Elm on the same brush. So you can see Fancy and Snug have a little bit more texture and sparkle. So I'm picking up a little bit of Elm because it's a little smoother. And I'm just gonna put it right here on the inner corner of my under eye and on the inner part of the lid to kind of blend everything together. So there's a little bit of brightness there without it being like, bam, bright. Especially with a multichrome in the lid, I don't necessarily want like a bright, sparkly inner corner. Yeah, that looks really pretty on the eye. It's kind of a very everyday fall multichrome. Not too sparkly, not too shifty. It's not black base, so you're not having like that really strong dark smoky shift. It's really pretty. I think it was a nice addition to this. Okay, so I'm just gonna do this on the other eye real quick. I started with Elm, so you can kind of see how it's brighter. It's like a nice bright champagne, but it's not too icy. It's kind of a yellowy champagne. And it is pretty subtle, and it's not overly like sparkly. Okay, so I'm back, and this is the finished look. I just finished off that eye, added some mascara. This is my Lisa Eldridge mascara, and then I threw on a lipstick. So I used my 1N, One Neutral pencil from Lisa Eldridge, and then one of my new Hermes lipsticks. This is the shade 23 Matte Beige Doubli. It is part of their fall collection. It's my favorite one packaging wise, with the blue, orangey brown, green, and it's just a really beautiful kind of warm brown. It's very similar to the new Byredo lipstick that I also just got, and I will do some comparisons in a video coming, but this is the shade September from Byredo, and they are very similar. This is slightly darker and slightly warmer, but very similar. Formula is very different though. This is matte, but one of the most hydrating mattes I've ever used, and the Byredo is a little bit more satin, but this is like an $80 lipstick, but I really love it, and I think the formula and the packaging is worth it, question mark. Obviously, what's worth it is always dependent on the person, but for me, very much worth it. So I really like this look. I really enjoy this palette. So let's get into final thoughts. I think this is a really beautiful palette. I think it is a really nice addition to Natasha Denona's line. I think it's a really nice companion to I Need a Nude or some of those warmer palettes like Bronze. And I think it's a really nice kind of companion to the newer Golden palette that came out. And you can see side by side, they're both warm, but they're very different. They're both warm neutral, but very different warm neutrals. So this is that peachy terracotta with the neutral browns, and this is neutral browns and golden. So if you have a nice golden undertone, this is gonna be a perfect, and I've said this before, golden to olive, this is gonna be a really nice nude palette. I think this is the nude, like I Need a Nude for my skin tone, for around my skin tone, olive undertones, yellow undertones, golden undertones. This is your I Need a Nude. This is everyday, easy, very skin native tones. This is also a nice quote unquote nude, so it's neutral palette for me. Like, I think these mattes look nice on the lid, and if I didn't have a multichrome on the lid, this could be a really nude, neutral look. But it is warmer. It is warmer in the red leaning way. It is peachy terracotta warm versus golden warm and golden brown warm. So they're different, and I think they both serve a different purpose, but I'm happy I have both. And I really wish I could get the shift. I will try to insert a clip here of the shift, but it's like if you saw it on my finger, you could see that green, and in person I very much see gold to green on the lid. I do think using finger right off the bat just made this eye look better. It is smoother overall. I see a little bit more texture on this one. I don't really have lid texture, and this is a very smoothing primer. So the fact that I do see a little bit of texture from using the brush, I think if you have textured lids or more mature lids, I would just stick to just using your finger. It's gonna look better because it is very smoothing on this eye and very smooth and silky. In this eye, I see just a little bit of texture. Nothing bad, I don't mind it, but I do see a slight difference. And then I will scoot over a little bit. I did do other looks. I've been wearing this to work. So Fancy and Elm are really pretty, just kind of champagne shades if you want that. But for everyday work, I have a clip, I should have a clip here of me using Hanker and Dynamism. I've been using those two shades the most. So like starting with Soft Spot as the base, putting Hanker all over the lid, which is this beautiful satin, and then putting Dynamism over that to add that like little bit of shine and a little bit of green. Really beautiful. I've worn that to work multiple times, that basically the same look. Maybe using Soft Spot to blend the edges or something, but I've used it multiple times and I really like the way that look. It is a very everyday neutral look for me, and I think easily attainable and not overly warm. So if you don't like warm tones, I wouldn't get this at all. But if you wanted something that's not like warm like today, I would do something like that. And then the other clip I have is using, this is the base again, and then I used a little bit of Ripe and Soft Spot, and then put Homey all over the lid. And you can see it is warm, but not orangey warm. Like you don't have the red that I do today. It is warm, it's bright, there is a nice shine to it. It's a really pretty look. I've done that one twice now, something similar to it. And Homey's a really pretty shade. I think it's a stupid name, but it's a really pretty shade. And then obviously this one, and then you can do so much more with this. So, and if you wanted sparkly but more rose gold, you've got this shade. I think this is a really beautiful palette. I think it's a nice addition to the line. I think if you like peachy tones, terracotta tones, that kind of warm look, and you would use these, I think it's definitely worth your money if it's in your budget. Obviously, I always preface, like, if you only buy drugstore makeup or you never buy, you won't use this enough to justify the money, don't buy it. I don't want people wasting money. I don't want my channel to be a place where I'm like, go buy this, go buy this, go buy this. I want to be a good sounding board to see, is it worth your money if you have it in your budget and actually already were interested in it. I never want to pressure people into buying something. As far as the new formulas go, I really love Flashover. I enjoy her cream to powder formula in the other ones, the old formula. Even the old ones that some people hated. I really love that formula. I think this is better though, and I think I'm anticipating this being the new cream to powder formula. It's a little bit easier to use. It's really lovely. It's just really nice. As far as the other new shades in here, I don't really see anything that makes them seem extra, like more special or different from some of the other ones. Like she has her wet effect shadow, she has her sparkling foiled. I feel like she could have called some of these shades those instead of making them a new one. I don't really see a difference to the new one, but I like them either way, so I'm not mad about the quote-unquote new formula. But personally, I don't really see a distinction between these and her existing formulas too much. So I feel like, especially with like some of the like sparkling foiled, sometimes they're sparkly, sometimes they're not. So I think she should just narrow down what the formulas actually are and be consistent in the texture of that formula versus naming them something different. Okay, well that is everything. This is probably gonna be a long video. Thank you so much if you stuck around for the whole thing. Let me know, have you already picked this up? Is it on your wish list? Like to get this fall, or like during the next Sephora sale, which should be coming up soon, or, you know, Black Friday, is this something you're gonna pick up later? I'd love to hear your thoughts and talk to you all in the comments below. Let me know what you think of the looks that I did, the other ones, and this one. Like I said, I just love to talk to you all in the comments. So it always makes my day reading the comments on my videos, especially this last one, that Get Ready With Me, that I just posted the other day, I think yesterday, that I've got some really lovely comments on that. So those always just, I had a long day yesterday and that made it better. Okay, so as always, thank you so much for watching. Remember to like and subscribe, and I will see you all in my next video.